My name is Victoria Hayes. I'm 38 years old, and I'm a trauma surgeon from Seattle, Washington. 6 months ago, I walked into a coffee shop and came face to face with my ex-husband Ryan, the man who'd divorced me 3 years earlier to marry my identical twin sister, Valerie. I was standing 3 feet away from him when he looked directly at me and said, "Excuse me, miss, you're blocking the cream station." He didn't recognize me. The man I'd been married to for 8 years, who'd promised to love me forever, who knew every scar on my body and every secret in my heart, he looked right through me like I was a stranger. But that moment of non-recognition became my greatest weapon. Because while Ryan thought I was just another customer, I overheard his phone conversation in that coffee shop. The insurance company approved the $5 million policy on Valerie. It'll be active in 2 weeks. Once the hiking accident is staged, we'll both be set. You get half, I get half. And Valerie's family will think it's another tragic Hayes sister death after Victoria's car accident last year. My car accident, the one Ryan had caused, the one everyone thought killed me, except I'd survived, changed my appearance during recovery, and started a new life. And now, I'd just discovered that Ryan had married my twin sister to kill her for insurance money. And he'd already tried to kill me. Before I tell you how I used my invisibility to gather evidence, how I saved my sister's life, and how I sent Ryan to prison for attempted double murder, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop your location in the comments. Let me take you back to the beginning. I met Ryan Hayes in 2012 when I was 26 years old and in my 3rd year of surgical residency at Seattle Grace Hospital. He was 29, working as a financial analyst at a major investment firm, and we met at a hospital fundraising gala. He approached me at the bar with a smile that could melt steel. "You're Dr. Hayes, right? The trauma surgeon everyone's talking about?" He extended his hand. "Ryan Miller. I donated to the trauma center in memory of my father. He died in a car accident when I was a kid. The trauma team tried to save him." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, immediately connecting with his pain. My parents had died in a plane crash when my twin sister Valerie and I were 21, making us intimately familiar with trauma and loss. "It was a long time ago, but it's why I wanted to meet you. The work you do, saving lives in those critical moments, it's incredible. You're a hero." That flattery, that recognition of my career's importance was exactly what I needed to hear. Surgical residency was brutal. 80-hour weeks, constant exhaustion, personal life reduced to stolen moments. Having someone see and admire my dedication was intoxicating. Ryan pursued me with focused intensity over the next 6 months. He'd bring coffee to the hospital during my overnight shifts. He'd wait for me after 30-hour rotations and drive me home. He'd meal prep healthy food for the week ahead because he knew I barely had time to eat. He integrated himself into my grueling schedule seamlessly. "Most people would be frustrated dating someone who works this much," I told him. "Most people don't understand ambition, but I do. I respect what you're building. Your career matters, Victoria. I'd never ask you to choose between medicine and me." He met Valerie early in our relationship, my identical twin sister who worked as an event planner and who I'd been inseparable from since birth. Despite being genetically identical, we'd always been different in temperament. I was analytical, driven, focused on achievement. Valerie was creative, social, focused on relationships and experiences. We complemented each other perfectly. "Ryan's amazing," Valerie told me after their first meeting. "He really sees you, Vic. He gets how important your career is. Hold on to this one." Ryan proposed 18 months after we met, during a rare weekend off when he'd planned a trip to the San Juan Islands. On a cliff overlooking the ocean, he got down on one knee with a platinum ring. "Victoria, you're the most extraordinary woman I've ever met. You save lives every day. You're brilliant, dedicated, and somehow you still make time for me. I want to spend my life supporting your dreams and being proud of everything you accomplish. Will you marry me?" I said yes with happy tears. Valerie screamed with joy when I called her. My twin sister was my maid of honor, standing beside me in our matching faces but different personalities, both of us crying as I married the man I thought was my soulmate. We married in October 2013 at a beautiful venue on Lake Washington. Ryan's vows were poetic and moving. Victoria, I promise to always support your calling. I promise that your career will never be a burden. I promise that when you come home after saving lives, I'll make sure our home is your sanctuary. I promise to be your partner in building an extraordinary life where both our dreams come true. The first 3 years of our marriage were exactly what he'd promised. Ryan supported my career completely. He never complained about my brutal schedule, attended hospital events, and bragged about his wife, the trauma surgeon, to anyone who'd listen. When I finished residency and was offered an attending position at Seattle Grace, he threw a celebration party and gave a toast. To Dr. Victoria Hayes, who chose one of the hardest specialties in medicine and excelled beyond everyone's expectations. I'm the luckiest man alive to be married to someone this incredible. Valerie and I remained close despite my demanding schedule. She'd coordinate sister dates around my call schedule, bring me lunch at the hospital, and maintain our twin bond even as our lives diverged. She'd started her own event planning business and was successful in her own right, though she'd joke that I was the impressive twin while she was just pretty good at throwing parties. Stop that, I'd tell her. You built a business from nothing. You're just as successful as me. But you save lives, Vic. I plan weddings. There's a hierarchy. Ryan always made sure to praise Valerie, too, treating her like the sister he'd never had. You're both incredible in your own ways, he'd say. Victoria saves lives in the ER. Valerie creates joy and memories. Both matter. In 2016, our marriage reached new heights. I was promoted to Chief of Trauma Surgery at age 30. The youngest person ever to hold that position at Seattle Grace. Ryan had been promoted to Senior Vice President at his firm with a substantial raise. We bought a beautiful house in Madison Park with water views. We were the definition of success. A power couple, both thriving in demanding careers. Ryan suggested we update our life insurance that year. With your new position and my promotion, we need adequate coverage. What if something happens to either of us? We each took out $3 million policies, substantial but reasonable given our combined income of over $600,000 annually. I thought it was prudent financial planning. I didn't realize Ryan was already calculating what I was worth dead. By 2017, I started noticing subtle changes in Ryan. He was more interested in my schedule, my routines, my weekend plans. He'd suggest activities, hiking dangerous trails, driving on icy mountain roads, going to remote locations alone. I thought he was encouraging me to take breaks from my stressful job. I didn't see the pattern. You should do that solo hiking trip to the Cascades, he'd say. You need time to decompress. I'll hold down the fort at home. You work hard too, Ryan. Why don't we both go? I have that client meeting, but you should definitely go. Take the challenging trails. Push yourself. You're always so capable. Looking back now, I can see he was setting up opportunities for accidents. But at the time, I just thought my husband was being supportive of my need for solitary outdoor experiences to balance my high-stress job. The cracks in our marriage started appearing in 2018. Ryan became distant, distracted, secretive about his phone. When I'd mention it, he'd say he was stressed about work. When I'd try to connect, he'd say he was tired. When I'd suggest counseling, he'd say we were fine. You're imagining problems because you're always looking for trauma, he'd say. Not everything is a crisis, Victoria. Sometimes people are just busy. But I wasn't imagining the late nights, the unexplained absences, the way he'd started criticizing everything about me. My work hours were obsessive. My dedication was unhealthy. My success was intimidating. The man who'd promised to support my career now seemed to resent it. Maybe you should scale back, he'd suggest. Take a less demanding position. Spend more time at home. Ryan, I'm chief of trauma surgery. I can't just scale back. This is my career. And what about our marriage? When do we become the priority? It was a trap. If I chose work, I was a bad wife. If I chose marriage, I'd have to sacrifice everything I'd worked for. Either way, I'd lose. The final straw came in May 2019, when I discovered Ryan was having an affair. I found text messages on his phone, messages to someone named V. The messages were romantic, intimate, planning secret meetings. My heart broke as I read them, but I didn't initially realize who V was. There were plenty of women with names starting with V. It couldn't be. But then I found a photo Ryan had saved. A selfie. And the woman in the photo was my identical twin sister. Ryan wasn't just having an affair. He was having an affair with Valerie. My twin. My other half. The person I'd shared a womb with, grown up with, trusted completely. When I confronted him, Ryan didn't apologize. He didn't beg for forgiveness. Instead, he said, I want a divorce. I'm in love with Valerie. I always have been. I married the wrong twin. Those words, married the wrong twin, shattered something fundamental in me. He'd married me, lived with me for 6 years, let me believe our marriage was real, all while wishing I was someone else, wishing I was my sister. How long? I demanded. 2 years, since your promotion. You became so obsessed with work, so unavailable. Valerie was there. She understood me. She's warmer than you, Victoria. More present, less driven by achievement. So, you're leaving me for my twin sister because I work too much as a trauma surgeon? The career you promised to support? I'm leaving you because you're not the person I thought you were. You're cold, clinical, married to your job. Valerie is everything you're not. The divorce was finalized in August 2019. Ryan got our house. I didn't fight him because I was working 80-hour weeks and didn't have time or energy for legal battles. He got half our joint assets. He kept everything while I walked away with my career and my shattered sense of trust. Valerie tried to call me hundreds of times. I never answered. She'd text, Vic, please talk to me. Let me explain. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. It just happened. Like falling in love with your twin sister's husband was an accident. Like betraying the person you'd shared everything with since before birth was just bad luck. 6 months after our divorce, in February 2020, Ryan married Valerie. My ex-husband married my identical twin in a small ceremony I found out about through social media. Friends who'd been at our wedding were at theirs. Family who'd toasted our marriage now celebrated his marriage to my sister. And then, in October 2020, exactly 7 years after Ryan and I had married, I was driving home from a brutal shift at the hospital when a car ran me off the road. My car flipped 3 times, crashed into a ravine, and burst into flames. Emergency responders found the wreckage but initially couldn't find a body. They assumed I'd been incinerated or thrown from the vehicle, except I hadn't died. I'd been thrown clear of the wreckage before the fire. I'd suffered severe injuries, burns, broken bones, facial trauma. I spent 3 months in a coma, underwent 15 reconstructive surgeries, and emerged looking different from the Victoria Hayes who'd gone into that car crash. My face had been rebuilt. My burn scars changed my appearance. I'd lost 40 pounds during recovery. Even my voice was slightly different due to smoke inhalation damage. When I finally woke up and saw myself in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I definitely didn't look like Valerie anymore. We'd been identical twins. Now we were just sisters who shared some features but weren't mirror images. And that's when I learned from investigators that my car accident hadn't been an accident at all. Witnesses had seen another vehicle deliberately ram mine off the road. Ryan had tried to murder me, and everyone, including Valerie, thought he'd succeeded. During my long recovery, as I pieced together what had happened, investigators revealed troubling information. The car that had run me off the road had been traced to a rental company. The person who'd rented it had used a fake ID. Security cameras at the rental location showed a man matching Ryan's build and height, though his face was obscured. "Dr. Hayes," Detective Sarah Chin told me during one of her hospital visits, "we believe your ex-husband attempted to murder you, but without conclusive evidence, we can't charge him. The circumstantial evidence is strong, but his lawyers would argue coincidence. He has an alibi. He was supposedly at home with your sister when the accident occurred." "My sister," I said, the words tasting bitter. "Did she know? Did Valerie know Ryan was trying to kill me?" "We don't believe so. Her reaction to your supposed death appeared genuine. She was devastated. She tried to plan your funeral. She's been in grief counseling." So Valerie thought I was dead, and she thought it was an accident. She had no idea that the man she'd married, the man who'd been my husband first, was a murderer who'd tried to kill me for insurance money. Because that's what investigators discovered next. Ryan had kept me as a beneficiary on his life insurance policies even after our divorce. More specifically, he'd forged documents showing I'd signed beneficiary designation forms that actually gave him access to my life insurance payout if I died. "He would have collected $3 million from your death," Detective Chen explained. "The divorce decree specified you'd each keep your own policies, but he never removed himself as beneficiary on your policy. With forged documents, he'd have been able to claim the payout before anyone realized the designation was fraudulent. But I survived. You survived. And legally, you're declared dead because your body was never recovered. There was a MIHES, closed casket memorial service. You've been presumed dead for months, which means Ryan thinks he got away with it. He thinks I'm dead. Has he tried to collect on the insurance?" "Not yet. There's usually a waiting period for presumed deaths when no body is found. But he will. In the meantime, Mrs. Hayes, or should I say, Ms. Porter." I'd started using my mother's maiden name during recovery to stay hidden. "You have an opportunity. If Ryan doesn't know you're alive, you could potentially gather evidence against him." "How? If I approach him, if anyone who knew me sees me, they'll recognize me. I don't look exactly like I did, but—" "You don't look like Valerie anymore," Detective Chen interrupted. "Your facial reconstruction, the burns, the weight loss, even your voice. You're not identical to your twin anymore. And people see what they expect to see. If everyone thinks Victoria Hayes is dead and you introduce yourself as someone else, they'll believe you." That's when the idea formed. I could hide in plain sight. I could use my changed appearance and my presumed death to investigate Ryan without him knowing. I could gather the evidence that would convict him of attempted murder. But first, I needed to understand what Ryan was doing now. Was he planning to collect on my insurance? Had he moved on? Was Valerie safe? I spent the next 3 months recovering physically and preparing emotionally. I underwent therapy to process the trauma, both the accident and the betrayal that preceded it. I worked with Detective Chin to understand Washington state law regarding murder for hire, insurance fraud, and attempted murder. And I carefully reinvented myself. Victoria Hayes had been polished, professional, always put together despite brutal work hours. She'd worn minimal makeup, kept her hair in a practical ponytail, dressed in scrubs or business casual. The new me, Charlotte Porter, had short platinum blonde hair, dramatic makeup that played up the slight asymmetry from my facial reconstruction, and a completely different style. I wore bold colors, statement jewelry, and carried myself differently. I practiced speaking with a slightly lower register and different speech patterns. I became a different person. I also changed careers. I couldn't return to trauma surgery without revealing my identity. Too many colleagues would recognize my surgical technique, even if they didn't recognize my face. Instead, I took a position at a private research foundation that worked with hospitals, allowing me to stay connected to medicine while remaining anonymous. By July 2021, 9 months after my death, I was ready to re-enter Seattle society and investigate Ryan. I started frequenting places I knew he'd go: upscale coffee shops near his office, restaurants he favored, the gym he belonged to. I needed to see him, to observe him, to understand what he was planning next. The first time I saw him, my heart nearly stopped. He was at a restaurant with Valerie, my twin sister, who I hadn't seen in over a year. She looked different too, but in the opposite way, where I'd become harder, edgier, transformed by trauma. Valerie looked softer, sadder, diminished. She'd lost weight in an unhealthy way. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been crying. She looked exhausted. Ryan, by contrast, looked thriving. He'd gotten a new, expensive haircut. He wore a designer suit. He laughed loudly at his own jokes. While Valerie picked at her food and stared into space, Ryan checked his phone constantly and seemed unconcerned with her obvious distress. I wanted to approach them. I wanted to tell Valerie I was alive, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I understood what Ryan was planning and had evidence to protect both of us. Over the next month, I surveilled Ryan carefully. I watched him meet with insurance agents. I saw him having lunch with a man Detective Chen identified as a private investigator who specialized in insurance fraud investigations. I noticed him taking Valerie on weekend trips to remote locations: hiking trails, mountain cabins, isolated beaches. The same kinds of trips he'd suggested I take before my accident. That's when I realized with cold horror, Ryan wasn't done. He'd tried to kill me for $3 million. Now he was planning to kill Valerie, his current wife, my twin sister, for whatever insurance policy he'd taken out on her. I contacted Detective Chen immediately. He's going to try again, with Valerie. We need to find out if he's increased her life insurance. Detective Chen ran records. There's a $5 million policy on Valerie Hayes taken out 6 months ago. Beneficiary is Ryan Hayes. That's significantly more than your policy was. Because now he knows he can get away with it. He thinks he successfully killed me and collected insurance money. He hasn't collected yet. Your policy is still in probate because of the missing body. But he thinks he will. So he's escalating. If he could get $3 million from me, why not $5 million from Valerie? He's planning another accident. We need evidence, Detective Chen said. Suspicion isn't enough. We need to catch him planning it, hiring someone, or attempting it. Which means I need to get close to him. I need to make contact without him recognizing me. And I need to record him confessing or planning Valerie's murder. That's dangerous, Dr. Hayes. If he figures out who you are, he won't. He thinks I'm dead. He thinks he won. That arrogance will make him careless. And what about your sister? Do you tell her you're alive? I thought about Valerie, my twin, my betrayer, my victim. Not yet. If she knows I'm alive, she might react in a way that alerts Ryan. I need him to think I'm dead, and that Valerie is his unsuspecting next victim. Once I have evidence, once I can prove what he did to me and what he's planning to do to her, then I'll tell her. But right now, keeping her in the dark keeps her safer. It was a cold calculation, but I'd become a cold person. The Victoria who'd been warm and trusting was dead, burned away in that car fire. The woman who remained was clinical, calculating, focused on justice and protection. I started creating opportunities to coincidentally encounter Ryan. I joined his gym under my new identity. I started working out at the same times he did. I made sure he'd see Charlotte Porter regularly, just another attractive woman in his orbit, someone he might notice but wouldn't connect to his dead ex-wife. It took 3 weeks of carefully orchestrated encounters before Ryan approached me at the gym. I was using the treadmill next to his when he said, "I've seen you here a few times. Charlotte, right? I saw your name on the sign-in sheet." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since my death. The man I'd loved, the man I'd married, the man who'd tried to murder me. He was looking at me with mild interest, the kind of expression someone gives an attractive stranger at a gym. "That's right," I said, keeping my voice in the lower register I'd practiced. "And you're Ryan. I've heard you introduce yourself to other people here." "Guilty. Are you new to Seattle?" "Fairly new. I moved here 6 months ago for work." 6 months ago, right after my death. But Ryan didn't make that connection. Why would he? Victoria Hayes was dead. This was just Charlotte Porter, a stranger. "What do you do?" he asked. "Medical research. I work with a foundation that partners with hospitals on trauma care protocols." His eyes lit up. "Trauma care? My ex-wife was a trauma surgeon. She died in a car accident last year." The way he said it, so casual, so matter-of-fact, made my blood boil, but I kept my expression neutral. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you. It was devastating, but life goes on. I'm remarried now, actually, to a wonderful woman who understands me better than my ex ever did." He was talking about Valerie, my sister, while chatting up another woman at the gym, while planning her murder. The audacity was breathtaking. "Your current wife is lucky," I said carefully. "I'm the lucky one. She's incredible, though lately she's been struggling with grief. My ex was her twin sister. Identical twins. She still hasn't fully processed losing her." "That must be hard on both of you." "It is. Sometimes I think she needs a change of scenery. A big trip. Get away from Seattle and all the memories. Maybe a hiking trip in Colorado or somewhere remote where she can disconnect and heal." Remote. Hiking. The same pattern as before. He was already setting up the narrative for Valerie's accident. "That sounds therapeutic," I said. "Does she like hiking?" "She's learning to love it. I'm teaching her, taking her on increasingly challenging trails, building up to something more substantial. Building up to killing her," he meant. My hands clenched on the treadmill handles, but I kept my voice light. "Well, I hope she finds peace. Losing a twin must be uniquely painful." "It really is," Ryan said, and then his phone buzzed. He checked it and frowned. "Sorry, I have to take this, but hey, maybe we could grab coffee sometime? Compare notes on trauma care? I'm fascinated by the field now after losing Victoria." "Sure," I said. "That would be nice." He walked away to take his call, and I stood there on the treadmill, shaking with rage and grief. Ryan Hayes had just asked out his dead ex-wife, who he'd tried to murder, while planning to murder her identical twin sister, and he had no idea he was talking to the woman he thought he'd killed. That's when I knew. I was going to destroy him. I was going to gather evidence, save my sister, and make sure Ryan Hayes spent the rest of his life in prison for what he'd done and what he was planning to do. Over the next 6 weeks, I carefully cultivated a friendship with Ryan while monitoring his behavior and gathering evidence. As Charlotte Porter, I was the perfect mark, interested in his stories about his late ex-wife, sympathetic to his situation with his grieving current wife, attractive enough to hold his attention, but not threatening enough to raise suspicions. We'd meet for coffee after gym sessions. He'd tell me about his life, his work, his marriage to Valerie, and I'd record every conversation on a device hidden in my purse, building evidence piece by piece. Valerie's been so depressed since Victoria died, Ryan told me during one of our coffee dates. She blames herself, says if she hadn't married me, maybe her sister would still be alive, like somehow our relationship caused the accident. That's survivor's guilt, I said. It's irrational, but common after losing someone close. Exactly. I keep telling her it was just a tragic accident. Victoria was driving too fast on a dangerous road in bad weather. It had nothing to do with us. The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly. But Valerie won't let it go. She's seeing a therapist, but honestly, I think she needs something more dramatic. A complete change of environment. Like what? I'm planning a big hiking trip for us in September. Devil's Tail Canyon in Colorado. It's supposed to be life-changing. Incredible views, challenging trails, a real test of endurance. I think if Valerie accomplishes something physically demanding, it might help her process her grief. Devil's Tail Canyon. I researched it immediately after that conversation. It was notorious for fatal hiking accidents, narrow trails, steep drop-offs, unpredictable weather. At least 3 people had died there in the past 5 years. Ryan was planning to kill Valerie there, just like he tried to kill me on a dangerous road. He had a pattern. Insurance policy, remote dangerous location, staged accident. I contacted Detective Chen immediately. He's planning it for September. Devil's Tail Canyon in Colorado. We need to find out if he's made contact with anyone to help stage the accident. Detective Chen pulled his financial records. There's a $25,000 cash withdrawal from his account last month. No explanation for it in his expense reports. That's consistent with hiring someone to help execute a murder. So, he's not doing it himself this time. He's learned from trying to kill me. Too much risk doing it personally. Now he's hiring someone. We need to identify who, and we need evidence that connects the money to a murder-for-hire scheme. Right now, it's just a large cash withdrawal. That's when I made a dangerous decision. I need to get closer to him, close enough that he'll trust me with information, close enough that maybe he'll let something slip about his plans. You're talking about letting him think he's seducing you? He's already interested. He asks me out constantly. I keep things friendly but non-committal. If I let him think I'm available, if I let him believe he's charming me, he might get careless, might say something incriminating. That's incredibly risky, Dr. Hayes. If he realizes who you are, he won't. He's too arrogant to believe I could have survived, too narcissistic to think I could outsmart him. He sees Charlotte Porter as a potential conquest, not as his dead ex-wife coming back to expose him. Against Detective Chen's advice, I started accepting Ryan's romantic overtures. Coffee dates became dinner dates. He'd text me constantly, sharing details about his life that he thought were charming, but were actually incriminating. Ryan's text, August 2021. Dinner was incredible tonight. You're so easy to talk to, Charlotte. So different from my wife. She's always so emotional and needy. You're independent, successful, interesting. Everything I thought I had with my ex-wife before she became consumed by her career. He was already comparing Valerie unfavorably to me, already setting up a narrative where I was the new woman who understood him better than his current wife. It was the same pattern he'd used with Valerie when he was still married to me. The second major incident came in mid-August when Ryan invited me to his house for dinner. Valerie's at a grief retreat this weekend. I'd love to cook for you and show you our place. Going to the house I'd once shared with Ryan, seeing my ex-husband in the home we'd bought together, that I'd surrendered in the divorce, was surreal. But I needed to see how Ryan was living, what evidence might be in his home office, whether there were any documents or communications that could prove his murder plot. When I arrived, the house looked different. All my touches, my color choices, my furniture, my art, had been erased. It was decorated in Valerie's style now, which made sense. Except there was something wrong about it. The house felt sterile, unlived in, like a showroom rather than a home. Valerie redecorated after we got married, Ryan explained, seeing me looking around. She wanted to make it her own. Can't say I love all her choices, but happy wife, happy life, right? It's lovely, I lied. Over dinner and wine, Ryan became increasingly comfortable. He started complaining about Valerie, how she was always crying about me, how she'd gained weight from depression, how she wasn't fun anymore. She's not like you, he said, his eyes on mine with clear intention. You're vibrant, healthy, passionate about life. Valerie's stuck in the past, mourning her sister instead of building a future with me. She lost her twin, I said carefully. That's not something you just move on from. It's been almost a year. At some point, grief becomes self-indulgence. I've tried to help her move forward, but she's resistant. That's why this hiking trip is so important. It'll force her out of her depression, make her focus on something other than Victoria. When is the trip exactly? September 17th. We leave for Colorado that morning. 3 days at Devil's Tail Canyon. Just us, the wilderness, and some serious trails that'll challenge her physically and mentally. September 17th. Less than a month away. I needed to accelerate my evidence gathering. That sounds intense, I said. Is she ready for trails that challenging? Honestly, probably not. But sometimes you need to throw people into the deep end. She'll either rise to the challenge or... He trailed off, taking a sip of wine. Or what? Or she'll realize she's not cut out for it. Either way, the trip will change things. The way he said it, so casual yet so calculated, made my skin crawl. He was telling me, in veiled language, that Valerie might not survive this trip, that something was going to change during those 3 days. I excused myself to use the bathroom, and when I did, I quickly detoured to Ryan's home office. I had maybe 2 minutes before he'd wonder where I was. I found his laptop open on his desk, password protected, but the screensaver showed recent documents. One was titled Colorado Trip Final Details. I took photos of the screen with my phone, trying to get the document name and any visible details. I could see partial text. Confirm with JR for Sept 17, $25K balance payment upon Devil's Tail East Ridge Approach. JR. The same initials as the hitman James Riley, who Marcus Mitchell had hired in that other case Detective Chen had mentioned. Was it possible Ryan had found the same contract killer? Or was it a different person with the same initials? Charlotte? Ryan's voice called from the other room. Everything okay? I quickly left his office and returned to the dining room. Sorry, I got turned around. Your house is bigger than I realized. Let me give you the full tour, he said, standing up and taking my hand. His touch made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to smile. He showed me through the house, and when we reached the master bedroom, the room I'd shared with him during our marriage, I saw something that made my blood boil. There was a photograph on Valerie's nightstand, a picture of Valerie and me from before our parents died. We were teenagers, identical in every way, grinning at the camera with our arms around each other. Valerie had kept that photo where she'd see it every morning and every night, a reminder of the twin sister she'd betrayed and then lost. The guilt must have been eating her alive. Valerie keeps that picture there, Ryan said, noticing where I was looking. She talks to it sometimes, tells Victoria about her day, apologizes for marrying me, asks for forgiveness. It's honestly a little disturbing. She's more connected to her dead sister than to me, her living husband. Maybe she needs to process her grief before she can fully be present with you. Or maybe, Ryan said, moving closer to me, his hand touching my waist. I need to find someone who can actually be present, someone who isn't living in the past, someone like you. He tried to kiss me. I turned my head at the last second, so his lips caught my cheek instead of my mouth. Ryan, you're married. To my sister? I caught myself. I mean, to your wife who's grieving her sister. This isn't appropriate. My marriage is essentially over, he said. Valerie and I are just going through the motions. After this Colorado trip, things will change. I'll be free to pursue what I actually want. There it was. Not quite a confession, but close. Free to pursue, suggested Valerie, wouldn't be in the picture after Colorado. I should go, I said, extracting myself from his proximity. This is moving too fast for me. Of course. I apologize. He was instantly contrite, the perfect gentleman again. I'm just drawn to you, Charlotte. You remind me of someone I cared about very much. Who? My ex-wife, before she became obsessed with work and pushed me away. You have that same intelligence, that same strength, but you're warmer, more accessible. Victoria was brilliant but cold. You're brilliant and human. He was comparing me to myself, telling me I was better than the woman I'd been. It was gaslighting beyond the grave. I left his house that night with my recordings, my photos of his computer screen, and a deep certainty that September 17th was meant to be the day Valerie died. I had less than 3 weeks to gather enough evidence to stop him and prove he'd already tried to kill me. The third major incident came when I finally saw Valerie in person. Not from a distance, not through surveillance, but face to face when I accidentally encountered her at a coffee shop. The same coffee shop where this whole phase of my investigation had started. I was ordering when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Tall oat milk latte, please. I turned, and there she was, my twin sister, who I hadn't spoken to in over 2 years, who'd betrayed me with my husband, who was now in danger of being murdered by that same husband. Up close, she looked even worse than she had. From a distance, she'd lost at least 20 pounds. Her face was drawn, her eyes were haunted. She looked like she was barely holding herself together. Our eyes met. For a moment, I thought she'd recognize me. Twin recognition, the connection we'd shared since before birth. But she just gave me a polite, sad smile and looked away. She didn't recognize me. Her identical twin sister was standing 3 feet away, and she had no idea. I grabbed my coffee and intentionally bumped into her as I turned. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's fine, she said quietly. Hey, are you okay? You look like you could use a friend. She laughed, but it was hollow. That obvious, huh? I'm Charlotte, I said, extending my hand. And you look like someone who's carrying the weight of the world. Valerie, she said, shaking my hand, and you have no idea. Want to talk about it? I'm told I'm a good listener. She hesitated, then said, You know what? Yes, I could use a stranger's perspective. No judgment, no history, just honest feedback. We sat down together, and Valerie started talking. My twin sister died in a car accident a year ago, and I'm the reason she's dead. How could you possibly be responsible for a car accident? Because I betrayed her. I had an affair with her husband while they were married. We fell in love, or I thought we did. He divorced her, married me, and 6 months later, she crashed her car and died. Everyone says it was an accident, but I think she was driving recklessly because she was heartbroken, because I broke her heart. And now I'm married to a man who I don't think ever really loved me. I think he loved her, and I was just available. A replacement. A backup twin. She was crying now, and I wanted to reach across the table and tell her everything. Tell her I was alive, that Ryan had tried to kill me, that he was planning to kill her. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I had everything I needed to protect her. Why do you think he didn't love you? I asked gently. Because he's distant, cold. He plans these trips, dangerous hiking trips, and insists I go even though I'm terrified of heights. He's increased my life insurance to $5 million without really explaining why we need that much coverage. He talks about his ex-wife constantly, how brilliant she was, how successful. I'm not a doctor. I'm not saving lives. I plan events. I'm ordinary, and he chose ordinary over extraordinary. Why would he do that unless what? Unless there was another reason, a reason that wasn't about love. She suspected. On some level, Valerie suspected that Ryan was planning something terrible. But she didn't know what to do with that suspicion, and she was paralyzed by guilt over my death. Valerie, I said carefully, if you think you're in danger, you need to trust that instinct. Maybe skip this hiking trip. Maybe talk to a lawyer about protecting yourself financially. But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm just paranoid because of grief? Ryan's been nothing but supportive since Victoria died. He held me while I cried for months. He never complained about my depression. What kind of person suspects their supportive husband of wanting to harm them? A smart person who's noticed red flags, I said. You mentioned the life insurance, the dangerous trips, the fact that he seems to want different things than you. Those are legitimate concerns. But I can't just leave him. Where would I go? What would I tell people? I'm divorcing my husband because I have a bad feeling, and I owe him. He took me in after I ruined my relationship with my sister, after I destroyed my family. I owe him my loyalty. You don't owe anyone your life, Valerie. If you're in danger, I'm not, she said firmly, but her eyes told a different story. I'm just grieving and paranoid. The hiking trip will be good for me. Ryan's right. I need to get out of my head, challenge myself physically, stop dwelling on my sister. She's gone. I can't bring her back. I just need to move forward. She left the coffee shop believing she was broken and paranoid. I left knowing I had less than 2 weeks to save her life. If this resonates with you, if you've ever felt invisible to someone who should know you better than anyone, please hit that like button and subscribe. Because what happened next, the evidence I gathered, the confrontation I staged, and the moment Ryan finally recognized me, might help someone else recognize the danger before it's too late. After my conversation with Valerie, I knew I was running out of time. September 17th was 12 days away. Ryan was planning to murder my sister on a remote trail in Colorado, and I was the only one who could stop it because I was the only one who knew what Ryan was capable of, because I'd survived his first attempt. I contacted Detective Chen and shared everything I'd gathered. The recordings of Ryan discussing the trip, the photos of his computer screen showing Colorado trip, final details, Valerie's admission that her life insurance had been increased to $5 million, and the pattern that matched his attempt on my life. We have circumstantial evidence, Detective Chen said, but we still don't have proof of murder for hire. We don't have communication between Ryan and whoever he's hired. We don't have evidence of the $25,000 going to a specific person for a specific purpose. A good defense attorney would argue all of this is coincidental. A husband planning a hiking trip and managing life insurance isn't illegal. So what do we do? Wait until he tries to kill Valerie and hope we can stop him in time? We need him to confess. Or we need to catch him communicating with his hired killer. Which means you need to get access to his phone or computer. The kind of access that lets us see his encrypted messages, his financial transactions, everything. That means I need to get much closer to him than I've been. I know, and Dr. Hayes, I have to warn you. If you do this, if you let Ryan think you're sleeping with him to get access to his communications, you're putting yourself in extreme danger. He's killed before, or tried to. If he figures out who you are. He won't. He's too arrogant, too convinced I'm dead. That arrogance is his weakness. I called Ryan that night. Hey, I've been thinking about our conversation at your house, about how your marriage is essentially over, about moving forward. I think maybe I moved too slowly. Maybe I was being too cautious. Charlotte. His voice was eager. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying Valerie's away for the week at another retreat. I'm saying you'll be alone in that big house. I'm saying maybe we could have dinner again and see where the evening goes. I'd like that very much. Tomorrow night? Tomorrow night. I spent the next 24 hours preparing. Detective Chen arranged for me to have a sophisticated recording device that looked like a regular phone charger. I could plug it in anywhere in Ryan's house, and it would capture all electronic communications from devices within range. I also wore a wire hidden in my clothing that would record any conversations. You're doing the bravest thing I've seen in 20 years of police work, Detective Chen told me before I left. But please be careful. We'll have surveillance outside the house. If anything goes wrong, if you feel unsafe, you use the code phrase and we come in immediately. The code phrase was, I need to check on my sister. A phrase that would mean nothing to Ryan, but would alert the surveillance team to intervene. I arrived at Ryan's house that night dressed like Charlotte Porter. Confident, sophisticated, nothing like the Victoria Hayes who'd lived there years ago. Ryan greeted me at the door with wine and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm so glad you came, he said, leading me inside. I've been thinking about you constantly since our last conversation. We had dinner. He'd cooked, trying to impress me with his domestic skills. During the meal, I excused myself to use the bathroom and quickly plugged in the recording device in his home office. It would capture everything from his laptop and phone for the next 72 hours. When I returned, Ryan had moved to the couch with the wine, clearly expecting the evening to take a romantic turn. I joined him, but kept the conversation focused on his upcoming trip. Tell me more about this Colorado hiking trip. It sounds incredible. It's going to be transformative, Ryan said, and there was something dark in his tone. Devil's Tail Canyon is challenging. Narrow trails, steep drop-offs, unpredictable weather. Valerie's terrified of it, but I think facing that fear will change her. Or she'll realize she can't handle it, that she's not equipped for the challenges life throws at us. Sometimes you learn your limitations the hard way. That sounds ominous. Does it? I just mean that sometimes people discover they're not cut out for certain experiences. And maybe that discovery leads to changes in their life, new paths, new relationships, fresh starts. He was practically telling me he was planning to kill Valerie, wrapped in metaphors about self-discovery and new beginnings. Are you hoping this trip leads to a fresh start for you? I asked carefully. I think it might. I think after September 17th, my life will be very different. Freer. More open to possibilities. More open to someone like you. He leaned in to kiss me, and this time, I let him. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed him to believe I was falling for his manipulation. I needed him to trust me enough to let his guard down completely. After a few minutes, I pulled back. Ryan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Anything. Are you planning to leave Valerie, or are you waiting for something else to happen? His eyes flashed with something. Calculation. Perhaps deciding how much to reveal. I'm waiting for the situation to resolve itself. Sometimes problems have a way of solving themselves if you create the right circumstances. What kind of circumstances? The kind where people make mistakes, where accidents happen, where the universe corrects things that were wrong from the beginning. Like your marriage to Valerie was wrong? Exactly. I married the wrong twin, Charlotte. I realize that now. Victoria was difficult, obsessed with work, emotionally unavailable, but she was brilliant and successful. Valerie is sweet, but ordinary. She's not what I need. She's not what I thought she'd be. So, you want out of the marriage? I want what's fair. I sacrificed a lot when I left Victoria for Valerie. I gave up a lucrative divorce settlement, a comfortable life, a wife with a high income. Valerie doesn't work anymore. She quit event planning after Victoria died. She's completely dependent on me financially. If I divorce her, I owe her alimony, maybe for years. That's not acceptable. So, what's the alternative? Ryan looked at me for a long moment, and I could see him deciding whether to trust me. Finally, he said, "The alternative is that sometimes people have accidents, especially on dangerous trails in remote locations. And when those accidents happen, life insurance policies pay out, and widowers are free to move on with their lives." There it was, as close to a confession as I was going to get without pushing him further. Ryan, are you saying... I'm saying that after September 17th, I'll be single and wealthy and free to pursue someone who actually matches my ambitions, someone like you. My phone, the one I'd placed conspicuously on the coffee table, buzzed with the notification I'd set up. I looked at it and frowned. Oh no, I have to check on my sister. The code phrase, Detective Chen's team would be moving into position now. You have a sister? Ryan asked. Yes, she's not well. I worry about her. I should call her. Can I use your office? It's quieter. Of course. I went to his office and pretended to make a call while actually checking the recording device. It had captured everything. Ryan's laptop communications, his phone messages, everything. I downloaded the files to my phone and signaled Detective Chen's team. Within minutes, I heard sounds outside, surveillance moving into position. But I had one more thing I needed from Ryan. I needed him to lead me to evidence about the hitman he'd hired. I returned to the living room. My sister's okay, false alarm, but Ryan, I have to ask, this plan of yours, this accident on September 17th, you're not doing it yourself, are you? That would be too risky. He smiled. Of course not. I learned from my mistake with Victoria. Doing it yourself leaves too much evidence. This time, I've hired a professional. Someone who knows how to stage wilderness accidents. Someone with a very specific skill set. Who? His name is J.R. Riley, former Army Ranger, now works as a wilderness survival guide, and occasionally helps people have accidents on remote trails. He's done this before. He's very good at it. And you trust him? I've already paid him half, $25,000. He gets the other half after the job is done. He'll be at Devil's Tail Canyon on September 17th. He'll make contact with Valerie and me on the trail. There'll be an accident. Valerie will fall from the East Ridge. It's a 300-foot drop. By the time search and rescue arrives, she'll be gone, and I'll be the devastated widower who tried to save her, but couldn't. He'd confessed. Not just to planning Valerie's murder, but to having tried to kill me. Your mistake with Victoria. The phrasing confirmed he'd been behind my car accident. That's incredibly risky, I said, keeping my voice steady despite my rage. What if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong. It didn't go wrong with Victoria. He stopped abruptly, realizing he'd said too much. His eyes narrowed. I mean, Victoria's accident happened without any issues. It was clean. This will be too. But I'd caught the slip, and so had the recording devices. Ryan, did you have something to do with Victoria's accident? Of course not. I was just saying it was clean. Quick, no suffering. That's how Valerie's will be, too. There was a knock on the door. Ryan's face showed confusion. I'm not expecting anyone. Seattle Police! A voice called. We have a warrant! Ryan's face went from confused to panicked to angry in seconds. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time that evening, and I saw recognition beginning to dawn. Charlotte, your voice, the way you move. Oh my God, who are you really? I pulled off the blonde wig I'd been wearing, revealing my own shorter dark hair underneath. I wiped off the dramatic makeup, and I looked at my ex-husband with my real face, scarred, changed, but still fundamentally me. Hello, Ryan. Did you really think you killed me? His face went white. Victoria? But you died. The car crashed. You burned. I survived, despite your best efforts to murder me. And now I've just recorded you confessing to hiring someone to kill Valerie, the same way you tried to kill me. Police burst through the door. Detective Chen led the team, and her face was grim with satisfaction. Ryan Hayes, you're under arrest for attempted murder of Victoria Hayes, conspiracy to commit murder of Valerie Hayes, solicitation of murder, and insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent. As they cuffed him, Ryan stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. You were supposed to be dead. I ran you off that road. You went into the ravine. The car burned. I survived, and I came back to make sure you couldn't kill anyone else, especially not my sister. After Ryan's arrest, I had 48 hours before Valerie would return from her grief retreat and discover that her husband had been arrested for trying to murder both her and her supposedly dead twin sister. Detective Chen needed time to build the complete case, and I needed time to prepare for the most difficult conversation of my life, telling Valerie I was alive. The evidence against Ryan was overwhelming. The recording device had captured all his electronic communications, including messages with J.R. Riley detailing the exact plan for Valerie's accident on Devil's Tail Canyon, including topographical maps, timing, payment schedules, and Riley's previous successful jobs staging wilderness deaths. Financial records showing both the initial $25,000 payment and the planned final payment, along with evidence that Ryan had forged insurance documents to increase Valerie's policy without her true knowledge or consent. Communications with an insurance investigator discussing the tragic pattern of Hayes' family deaths, first me, then potentially Valerie, and how quickly he could collect on both policies. Most damningly, they found Ryan's journal, a detailed account of his planning for both murders. The entry from October 2020, the day of my car accident, read, Victoria's accident went perfectly. Car went off cliff exactly where I forced it. Fire destroyed most evidence. Body not recovered. Even better. Insurance claim delayed, but will eventually pay. Lesson learned. Direct involvement too risky. Next time, hire a professional. The next time was Valerie. And hire a professional led them to J.R. Riley, who was arrested in Colorado and immediately agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. Riley's testimony confirmed that Ryan had hired him to kill Valerie and that Ryan had explicitly admitted to having killed his first wife the same way. Mr. Hayes told me he'd already successfully staged one car accident death, Riley testified to investigators. He said his ex-wife had died in October. 2020, fell off a cliff in her car. Body was badly burned. He said insurance paid out eventually and no one suspected anything. He wanted the same type of thing for his current wife. Wilderness accident, remote location, quick death, insurance payout. He was very calm about it, like he was hiring someone to do construction work, not murder his wife. Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Morrison called the case against Ryan one of the clearest examples of serial attempted murder I've prosecuted. The charges included attempted murder, first degree, of Victoria Hayes, conspiracy to commit murder of Valerie Hayes, solicitation of murder, hiring Riley, insurance fraud, forging documents, false claims, assault with intent to kill, for forcing my car off the road. Mr. Hayes faces multiple life sentences if convicted on all counts, A.D. Morrison explained to me. With Riley's cooperation, your recordings, the electronic evidence, and your testimony about surviving the first attempt, this is as strong a case as I've ever seen. But before the legal proceedings could truly begin, I had to face Valerie. I had to tell my twin sister that I'd been alive for a year, that I'd been investigating her husband, that he'd tried to kill me and was planning to kill her. Detective Chen arranged for the meeting to take place at the police station, a controlled environment where Valerie would be safe and where mental health professionals would be on standby. Valerie had been told there was an emergency regarding her husband, but not what the emergency was. The morning of the meeting, I stood in front of a mirror and looked at myself. I didn't look like Victoria Hayes anymore. Not exactly. The burns, the reconstructive surgery, the weight loss, the different hair, the changes wrought by trauma. But I wasn't Charlotte Porter either. I was something in between. A woman who'd died and been reborn different. Valerie arrived at the police station confused and frightened. "What's happening? Where's Ryan? Someone said he was arrested but won't tell me why." Detective Chen brought her to a private room where I was waiting. When Valerie walked in and saw me, she froze. "I know you," she said slowly. "You're the woman from the coffee shop. Charlotte, what are you doing here? What's going on?" I pulled off the blonde wig I'd been wearing and wiped away the makeup that changed my appearance, and I looked at my twin sister, my betrayer, my victim, my other half, with my real face. "Val, it's me. It's Victoria." Valerie's face went through a progression of emotions so rapid I could barely track them. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, shock, denial, horror, and finally, overwhelming grief. She collapsed into a chair, hyperventilating. "You're dead. You're dead. I mourned you. I blamed myself. You're dead." I survived the car accident. I was badly injured, underwent extensive surgery, looked different enough that no one recognized me, and I let everyone think I was dead because I discovered that Ryan had tried to kill me, that he'd run me off the road deliberately. No, Ryan wouldn't. He mourned you. He held me while I cried. He tried to murder me for insurance money, Val. And when he married you, he increased your life insurance to $5 million and hired a professional killer to stage your death as a hiking accident on September 17th. You were going to die on that Colorado trip. Ryan was planning to push you off a cliff and collect the insurance money. Valerie was crying now, deep, wrenching sobs. "You've been alive this whole year, and you didn't tell me? I grieved for you. I wanted to die because of what I'd done to you, and you were alive?" "I couldn't tell you. I needed to gather evidence against Ryan. I needed to make sure I could prove what he'd done and what he was planning. If I'd told you I was alive, he might have figured it out. He might have accelerated his plans or gone after both of us. So you let me think you were dead. You let me live with the guilt of believing I'd driven you to your death. You let me marry your murderer. You watched me for a year and did nothing? I saved your life." My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "Ryan was planning to kill you in 12 days, Val. I stopped him. I gathered evidence. I recorded his confession. I made sure he's going to prison for the rest of his life. I protected you even after you betrayed me with my husband." "I'm sorry," Valerie sobbed. "I'm so sorry about Ryan, about the affair, about marrying him. I was broken after my engagement fell apart, and Ryan was there, and he made me feel special, and I didn't think about how it would hurt you. I was selfish and weak, and I've regretted it every day since. And yet you still married him. Because I loved him, or I thought I did. And I thought if I didn't marry him, your divorce would have been for nothing, that I'd have destroyed your marriage and thrown away the man who loved me. I didn't see that he was using me, that he'd manipulated both of us. Detective Chen stepped in. Mrs. Hayes, Valerie, I know this is overwhelming, but your sister saved your life. And now, we need your help to make sure Ryan is convicted. We need you to testify about the life insurance he took out on you without your full knowledge, about the trips he planned to remote dangerous locations, about anything that seemed suspicious. Over the next week, Valerie and I worked together, awkwardly, painfully, but together, to build the case against Ryan. She provided testimony about how Ryan had increased her life insurance, claiming it was standard financial planning, but never fully explaining why she needed $5 million in coverage. She described how he'd insisted on planning the Colorado trip despite her fear of heights and her protests that she wasn't ready for such challenging trails. He kept saying it would change everything, Valerie testified, that after September 17th, our marriage would be different. I thought he meant I'd overcome my grief and we could finally move forward. But he meant I'd be dead. Valerie also provided evidence of emotional abuse. Ryan had systematically undermined her confidence, criticized her appearance, compared her unfavorably to me, ironically, and isolated her from friends and family. He said I was too dependent on Victoria's memory, that I needed to let her go completely. He didn't want me to have photos of her, didn't want me to talk about her. I thought he was helping me move on. But I think he was trying to erase her so no one would connect our deaths. His 2 wives both dying in accidents within a few years. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for September 15th, 2 days before Ryan had planned to kill Valerie on Devil's Tail Canyon. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The preliminary hearing took place on September 15th, 2024, at King County Superior Court in Seattle. Judge Patricia Martinez presided. The courtroom was packed with media, colleagues from both my and Ryan's professional lives, and observers fascinated by the sensational story. Dead wife comes back to save her twin sister from the husband who tried to kill them both. Ryan sat at the defense table in an orange jail jumpsuit, looking diminished without his expensive suits and polished charm. His attorney, Richard Blake, was known for aggressive defense tactics, but even he seemed overwhelmed by the evidence against his client. Ada Morrison delivered the opening statement. Your Honor, this is a case about a man who murdered for money. Ryan Hayes tried to kill his first wife, Victoria Hayes, by running her car off a cliff in October 2020. He believed he'd succeeded. Her car burned, her body wasn't recovered, she was declared legally dead. He moried publicly while waiting to collect $3 million in life insurance. Then he married his dead wife's identical twin sister, Valerie, increased her life insurance to $5 million, and hired a professional killer to stage her death as a hiking accident. The only reason both women are alive today is because Victoria survived the first attempt, spent a year gathering evidence, and stopped him before he could complete the second murder. This is premeditated, calculated, serial attempted murder. Blake's response tried to frame everything as misunderstanding. Your Honor, my client had an affair and made poor choices in his marriage. But affair is not murder. The evidence will show that Victoria Hayes' car accident was exactly that, an accident, that Ryan Hayes' communications with J.R. Riley were misinterpreted, that increasing life insurance was prudent financial planning, not murder conspiracy. The prosecution wants you to believe a complicated revenge fantasy from an ex-wife who's bitter about her failed marriage. Then came the evidence. Ada Morrison methodically presented, The recording of Ryan confessing to me about hiring Riley, about learning from his mistake with Victoria, about planning Valerie's accident on September 17th. Financial records showing Ryan was facing bankruptcy, that his investment firm had discovered irregularities in his accounts, that he needed money desperately. $3 million from my insurance would have saved him. $5 million from Valerie's would make him wealthy. Testimony from witnesses who'd seen a vehicle matching Ryan's rental deliberately ram my car off the cliff in October 2020. I saw the vehicle accelerate toward the smaller car and push it off the road, one witness testified. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. I tried to report it, but by the time police arrived, the aggressive vehicle was gone. Electronic evidence showing Ryan had researched how to stage car accidents, murder for insurance money, how long until missing person declared dead, and Devil's Tail Canyon fatal accidents. J.R. Riley's testimony via video from jail. Ryan Hayes hired me in August 2024 to kill his wife Valerie on a hiking trail in Colorado. He paid me $25,000 up front, promised another $25,000 on completion. He provided detailed plans. I was to approach them on Devil's Tail Canyon's East Ridge Trail, offered to take a photo, position Valerie near the edge, and push her off. It's a 300-foot drop. She wouldn't have survived. He specifically said he'd done something similar with his first wife, but had learned to hire professionals instead of doing it himself. Then it was my turn to testify. I walked to the witness stand and was sworn in. Ryan stared at me like he still couldn't believe I was alive, like I was a ghost haunting him. Ada Morrison walked me through my testimony. Meeting Ryan, our marriage, the divorce after his affair with Valerie, the car accident that I now knew was attempted murder. Dr. Hayes, tell us what happened on October 14th, 2020. I was driving home from a late shift at the hospital. I'd been on call for 36 hours. I was exhausted. I was driving along the cliff road when another vehicle came up behind me, driving aggressively. At first, I thought it was just a reckless driver. But then the vehicle deliberately rammed my car from behind, pushing me toward the edge. It rammed me again, harder. My car went off the cliff, rolled 3 times, and caught fire. I was thrown clear before the fire consumed the vehicle, but I suffered severe injuries, 3rd-degree burns, broken bones, facial trauma. Did you see the driver of the vehicle that hit you? Not clearly, but I saw the rental sticker on the bumper as it drove away, and investigators later confirmed that Ryan had rented a vehicle that day using a fake ID. What happened after you woke up from your injuries? I learned I'd been declared dead, that everyone thought I'd died in the accident, and investigators told me they believed it was attempted murder, not an accident. That's when I realized Ryan had tried to kill me, and that's when I decided to use my presumed death to investigate him and gather evidence. So, you deliberately stayed dead for nearly a year while building a case against your ex-husband? Yes. I changed my appearance, took a new identity, and reinvented myself. And when I discovered Ryan had married my twin sister and was planning to kill her the same way he'd tried to kill me, I knew I had to stop him. Blake's cross-examination tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife manufacturing evidence. Dr. Hayes, isn't it true you were angry about your ex-husband's affair with your sister? That you wanted revenge? I wanted justice. There's a difference. You admit you stalked my client, pretending to be someone else, recording him without his knowledge? I documented his conspiracy to commit murder. That's not stalking. It's evidence gathering with police cooperation. You seduced my client as part of this elaborate revenge scheme. I pretended to be interested in him to get close enough to record his confession, and it worked. He told me everything, how he'd tried to kill me, how he was planning to kill Valerie, how he'd hired J.R. Riley. All of it is on tape. Convenient that you happened to be recording during these alleged confessions. Not convenient, strategic. I knew Ryan was dangerous. I knew he was planning my sister's murder. I worked with law enforcement to gather evidence that would convict him, which I did. Then Valerie testified. She walked to the stand looking fragile but determined. She described her marriage to Ryan, the increased life insurance she'd discovered after his arrest, his insistence on the Colorado hiking trip despite her protests. "Mrs. Hayes, did you know your husband was planning to kill you?" Ada Morrison asked. "Not consciously, but I had this persistent feeling that something was wrong, that Ryan wanted me dead. I'd tell myself I was being paranoid, that I was traumatized by Victoria's death, but the feeling wouldn't go away. And then I discovered that feeling was right. He'd been planning my murder for months." "How do you feel about your sister Victoria being alive?" Valerie's eyes filled with tears. "I'm grateful. Angry that she didn't tell me sooner. Grateful she saved my life. Devastated that I betrayed her by having an affair with Ryan. And horrified that I married a man who tried to kill her and was planning to kill me. It's complicated. Do you believe Ryan Hayes tried to murder your sister?" "Yes. The evidence is overwhelming, and knowing him now, knowing he was capable of planning my murder, I have no doubt he tried to kill Victoria first." Blake tried to suggest Valerie was lying to stay in her sister's good graces, but the evidence was too strong. The recordings, the financial documents, Riley's testimony, the witnesses from my car accident, it all pointed to one conclusion. Judge Martinez delivered her ruling after 3 days of testimony. "I find probable cause to believe Ryan Hayes attempted to murder Victoria Hayes in October 2020 and conspired to murder Valerie Hayes in September 2024. The evidence is comprehensive and compelling. Mr. Hayes will be held without bail pending trial. This court finds he poses an extreme danger to both victims." Ryan's face remained impassive, but his hands were shaking. As deputies led him back to jail, he looked at me and said, "You were supposed to stay dead." "Sorry to disappoint you," I replied, "but I'm very much alive, and I'm going to make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison for what you tried to do to me and my sister." The trial was set for January 2025. 3 months to prepare for the final confrontation that would determine whether Ryan spent the rest of his life in prison or somehow talked his way to freedom. The trial began on January 8th, 2025, and lasted 4 weeks. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. The recordings, the financial records, Riley's testimony, witness accounts of my car being deliberately run off the road, electronic evidence of Ryan researching murder methods and life insurance fraud. The defense tried every angle. I was a vengeful ex-wife. Valerie was complicit in a false accusation. Riley was lying to reduce his sentence. The car accident was genuinely accidental. The life insurance was legitimate financial planning. But the evidence was irrefutable. The jury deliberated for only 8 hours before returning their verdict on February 5th, 2025. Count 1, attempted murder, Victoria Hayes. Guilty. Count 2, conspiracy to commit murder, Valerie Hayes. Guilty. Count 3, solicitation of murder. Guilty. Count 4, assault with intent to kill. Guilty. Count 5, insurance fraud. Guilty. Judge Martinez scheduled sentencing for 4 weeks later. On March 5th, 2025, I gave my victim impact statement. Ryan Hayes tried to kill me by running my car off a cliff and leaving me to burn to death. When he thought he'd succeeded, he married my twin sister. Not because he loved her, but because he needed another insurance payout. He calculated what we were worth dead. $3 million for me, $5 million for Valerie. He hired a professional killer. He planned every detail. The only reason my sister and I are alive is because I survived his first attempt and spent a year gathering evidence to stop him. Ryan didn't just try to murder us physically. He murdered trust, safety, the ability to believe people when they say they love you. He manipulated, gaslit, and used both of us. He deserves the maximum sentence. Valerie also gave a statement. I betrayed my twin sister by having an affair with her husband. I've had to live with that guilt, but Ryan betrayed us both worse. He tried to murder Victoria, married me to kill me next, and would have succeeded if Victoria hadn't been brave enough to come back from the dead and stop him. I want the maximum sentence so he can never hurt anyone again. Judge Martinez's sentence was harsh and comprehensive. Ryan Hayes, you are a calculating predator who married 2 women with the intent to murder them for financial gain. You successfully attempted murder of Victoria Hayes and came terrifyingly close to murdering Valerie Hayes. You showed no remorse, no humanity, no recognition that these were human beings who loved you, not just insurance payouts. I hereby sentence you to 2 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Additionally, 15 years for solicitation of murder, 10 years for assault, and 5 years for fraud, all consecutive. You will spend the rest of your natural life in prison. You will never be free again. Ryan would die in prison. 2 life sentences plus 30 years meant he'd never breathe free air again. The financial consequences were equally satisfying. I sued Ryan in civil court for attempted murder, emotional distress, and fraud. The judgment was $15 million, far more than he had, but it meant every asset he'd ever acquire would go to me. Valerie received a separate $10 million judgment. Between us, we bankrupted him completely. J.R. Riley received a 25-year sentence with possibility of parole after 17 years in exchange for his testimony against Ryan. The recovery process for Valerie and me was complicated. We attended joint therapy to process the betrayal, the attempted murders, and the year I'd been dead without telling her. Our relationship would never be what it was before Ryan. That twin bond had been permanently damaged by her affair and my necessary deception. I understand why you didn't tell me you were alive, Valerie said during one therapy session. You had to protect yourself and gather evidence, but it still hurts that you let me grieve for a year when you were alive. And I understand you fell for Ryan, I replied, but it still hurts that you betrayed me with my husband while we were married. I was weak and selfish, and I'm sorry. I was cold and analytical, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Gradually, painfully, we rebuilt trust. Not the effortless twin connection we'd had before, but something harder won and perhaps more valuable. A relationship based on choice rather than biology, on forgiveness rather than assumption. I returned to trauma surgery at a different hospital under my real name, no longer hiding. The story of the dead surgeon who came back to save her sister became hospital legend, and I used my platform to advocate for domestic violence survivors and women in abusive relationships. Valerie slowly rebuilt her event planning business and became an advocate for victims of romantic manipulation and financial abuse. She spoke publicly about how Ryan had groomed her, exploited her vulnerabilities, and nearly killed her. 5 years after Ryan's conviction, Valerie and I are in a good place. Not the inseparable twins we once were, but sisters who survived trauma together and chose to maintain their relationship. We have dinner monthly, text regularly, and support each other's advocacy work. Ryan sits in Washington State Penitentiary, serving his life sentences. According to prison records, he's had multiple disciplinary incidents for attempting to manipulate guards and other inmates. The predator remains a predator, but at least he's caged. And every day I wake up alive, despite Ryan's best efforts to kill me, is a victory. I survived, I saved my sister. I got justice. The woman I was before the car accident is gone, but the woman who emerged from those flames is stronger, fiercer, and impossible to erase. 5 years have passed since I walked into that coffee shop and my ex-husband didn't recognize me. I've had time to heal, reflect, and understand what happened and how I survived. These are the lessons I want to share. First, sometimes the most profound betrayal is being unseen. Ryan lived with me for 8 years and didn't recognize me after my appearance changed. That wasn't just about burns and surgery. It was about the fact that he never really saw me as a person. I was an insurance policy, a financial asset, an obstacle to his next victim. When you realize someone never truly saw you, the betrayal cuts deeper than any physical wound. Second, trust your instincts about danger even when everyone says you're paranoid. Valerie felt something was wrong in her marriage but dismissed it as grief and paranoia. I felt red flags before my accident but rationalized them. Our instincts were screaming warnings, we just weren't listening. If you feel unsafe, if something feels wrong, investigate. Don't dismiss your gut feelings as overreaction. Third, survival sometimes requires becoming someone else. I had to die to stay alive. I had to become Charlotte Porter to gather evidence as Victoria Hayes. That transformation, changing appearance, identity, personality, saved my life and Valerie's. Sometimes you can't fight your enemy as yourself. You have to become someone they underestimate. Fourth, life insurance can be a motive for murder. Ryan wasn't alone. Financial desperation drives many people to murder spouses for insurance money. If your partner suddenly wants to increase your life insurance significantly, especially after financial problems, question it. Protect yourself legally. Make sure beneficiaries reflect your actual wishes. And if you're uncomfortable, refuse. Fifth, even family can betray you, but reconciliation is possible. Valerie betrayed me profoundly by having an affair with Ryan. But she didn't know he was a murderer. She was manipulated, used, and victimized too. Rebuilding our relationship required forgiveness on both sides. Her forgiving me for the year of deception, me forgiving her for the affair. It's not the relationship we had before, but it's real and valuable. Most importantly, I learned that death, whether literal or metaphorical, can be a rebirth. The Victoria Hayes who married Ryan was naive, trusting, and focused solely on her career. The Victoria Hayes who survived his murder attempt is harder, wiser, more aware of human evil. I died in that car fire in some ways, and someone stronger emerged. To everyone watching who's felt unseen by a partner, who's in a relationship where financial pressures are creating dangerous situations, who has instincts screaming that something's wrong, please listen, document, protect yourself, trust that inner voice. Thank you for watching my story. If it resonated with you, please subscribe. And if you suspect your partner might harm you for insurance money or any other reason, please contact Domestic Violence Resources immediately. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. Remember, sometimes the greatest weapon is being underestimated. Sometimes survival requires invisibility. Sometimes you have to die to truly live. Trust yourself, protect yourself, save yourself,